Kia ora, everyone. Hello, welcome to the Justin Rogers podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch or listen. Today's guest is Jon Hunter. So Jon and I have known each other for over a decade. Jon was actually in my drama school audition to get into Toi Whakaari. So Jon is one of New Zealand's premier acting coaches. He works across performance spectrum with actors, singers, dancers, and presenters in screen, stage, and studio settings. He has contributed significantly to professional actor training, having taught at drama schools and theatre companies around the country, including 7 years as senior acting tutor. That's when I met Jon, the head of voice at Toi Whakaari New Zealand Drama School. 6 years as an artistic tutor at the New Zealand School of Music, Victoria University of Wellington, and 3 years as a teaching fellow at the Aotearoa New Zealand Opera School, Waikato University. He was New Zealand's first Estel voice master teacher and is a leading voice expert in the industry. Me wanting to make my voice sound better after talking about the voice stuff. Jon's commitment to teaching reliable, repeatable, energizing, and empowering approaches to acting led to the founding of the Hunter Acting Studio, where he now provides bespoke actor development through one-on-one coaching alongside state-of-the-art acting training opportunities in person to actors around the country and online, actors around the world. And so I take these classes with Jon. Jon was my teacher at drama school. He's been a friend all these years, a mentor all these years. And he honestly has, I'm going to say it, he's got the best approach to acting. It is so in the body, like it's hard to kind of talk about it without it sounding generic, but just believe me when I say the way that he teaches acting is unlike anything I've ever experienced. And is really freeing and also really satiating as an actor. Like, I actually enjoy doing it, and it feels like something I actually want to keep coming back to. Some of Jon's driving questions he's added here, which is what will allow us to come into full relationship with our bodies, free of shame and longing. That's what I mean about this embodied approach to acting. And how will a return to nature return us to knowing our belonging? And we talk a little bit about this in the podcast as well. And this is really fun that Jon added. Jon Hunter is probably either wandering in silence alone through a forest somewhere. That's so true. I've wandered in that forest with him sometimes. He lives in a beautiful forest down in Wellington. Or in a room crammed full of loud, sweaty actors stretching their bodies to the limit. That's also me. You'll find me in these places as well. Jon Hunter is a high-performance acting coach. Jon Hunter has created a living laboratory for rigorous actor training. I had a really great conversation with Jon, and honestly, it's just me letting Jon go and run wild because Jon has got an amazing mind for acting, but also an amazing ahua, an amazing way of being in his ability to communicate what he means, see what a person in front of him needs, what somebody's coaching, what they need, and how to broach that to them in a way that's sometimes quite confronting, but is exactly what they need, but is also very loving. So Jon is a very loving, beautiful human. So I really enjoyed talking to Jon, my first ever podcast recording. And Jon was kind enough to be my first guest. And no doubt we'll do more with him in the future. So enjoy this conversation with the one, the only, Jon Hunter. So, Jon, I have got questions for you. Thank you, by the way, for being the first ever guest on my podcast.
No pressure.
Yeah. Well, you're the tone setter, so it's going to be whatever it is.
Right,
so
okay.
I've got a couple of questions for you, and I guess my first one is, right now, what gets you up in the morning, i.e. what fires you up about the work that you do in the world? What is the thing that is exciting you about the work you do in the world?
I can feel two pulls in me as I think about that, and one of them is a positive and one of them is perhaps a negative or something that is sort of less successful. I think the positive part of it is having spent a long time inside establishments, training spaces that I've been brought into as an employee or as a guest teacher or something, and you're trying to make yourself fit, trying to work out what the rules of the game are, what the ask is of me, and trying to deliver and do the best thing that I can. And not being in that relationship anymore to the people that I work with. These are people that have opted into working with me, and I've opted into working with them in the way that I do. So I think there's something really beautiful about the just the honesty of the relationship that becomes possible when that is the meeting. Um, the way that we can continue to orient around what are we here for again, and that changes. So in some ways your question is hard to answer. I'm like, I don't know, because I'm not quite sure what the day will bring, or I'm still processing what the last encounter with whomever it might be with you, let's say, what the last encounter was, and therefore how we're going to meet each other today and what the conversation might be or what the work might be. So to go back to trying to answer the question, I think there's something of enjoying the continual growth of relationship inside the work that I do. It's very rare. I find now that I'm working with somebody that I don't know at some level. Either there's somebody I've worked with for quite some time, or there's an introduction that has happened where there's something that connects us in some strong way anyway, even if we've not directly worked with one another. And then the negative that I alluded to is something about my impatience in some ways with the potential that I see in a person that I'm working with, actors primarily, in their potential, in how fast they're making sense of something, or how fast they are working with something or trying something out, or indeed how fast the industry is meeting them where they're at in terms of their potential and what they're able to give. And so it's something I'm like, okay, it's not quite where it needs to be yet. So let's get out of bed. Let's work out how to get it moving a little bit faster, or getting a little bit closer, or being a little bit clearer. Those sort of feel like the two kind of major things. And they're very, I think the thing that I just want to chuck onto the end of this is they feel very easy as well. Like these aren't kind of big movements in me. Like it's not big kind of energetic, like, here's the day ahead of me. Feels very easeful, very easy to roll out of bed and go, okay, what's today got for me? And that's a really nice place to be, and certainly not somewhere that I've been my entire life or my entire working life. I can think of big swathes of time where it was hard to not get out of bed, literally. I don't find that hard because the cup of tea is always calling, or the cup of coffee is always calling. But, you know, the hopping in the car and going to X building to do that work for somebody else, I think has at times been really, really a challenge.
Now, one thing that I've always found really interesting is such a boring word, but one thing that I've found interesting about you, and I have experienced it firsthand, is exactly what you alluded to around these long relationships, which is kind of the antithesis of class culture. We jump in, we do an acting class for a term. And yeah, so you and I met at drama school, pre-drama school. You were in my audition to get into drama school. And that was the beginning of this long kind of mentorship in lots of ways. And I find that that's really unique and that's really interesting, because my sense is, and we've talked about this before, is that whether consciously or not, you're investing in an artist's journey across time, beyond us, so we've just finished a block of class together. And that is a smaller chapter in a longer game. And I am also hearing in you this sense of ease, which is another thing that I've always admired in you. This kind of sense of patience, because there is that long game, yet there is a real intensity to what you are asking of the people you work with, and your ability to confront in a gentle way, but can, yeah, I suppose I'm just throwing it out there, this idea of patience in the long run, but then really, really pointed questions inside of all the parts of that journey. And I suppose my question is, has this way of working, does this feel natural to you? Has this evolved with you being a teacher? And of course, the nature of our industry and acting is little projects, you know. So yeah, where did this approach come from? This kind of relationship-based approach to mentoring or coaching or helping people through their journeys?
It feels very natural to me now. Like it makes a lot of sense. I don't work hard to be this way, but it's certainly not the way that I've always worked, and it's not the way that the relationships that I had, perhaps as a young actor myself, most of them weren't of this nature. And yeah, I think you're right. I think something of when you were talking about that seeming conflict between patience and intensity, I think, as you say that, and I've never really thought about it that way before, but I absolutely can look at it through your eyes and say, yep, that's a pretty good summing up of the two parts of how I work. I think the patience bit of it comes through me being really aware of what the intensity does to a person, of what the robust nature of the way that we are when we're in a room together, or when I'm on a call with somebody, or when I'm sending somebody a message saying, what about this? Or I think it could be that. I'm aware that it necessarily is big. I'm not really doing my job if it's not, in a way. I don't think I'm not doing my job well enough if I'm not putting big questions, big challenges in front of you. And I'm in the really wonderfully lofty position at this, time in my career where this is all I really do. It's all I really do. It's kind of how I live my life now. Like you say, I get up out of bed and I think about this. I think about the actors that I work with. I think about the next class, and I don't really think about much else other than just how I want to go about my day, walk the dogs, what chores do I have to do. But most actors, certainly at the beginning and middle stages of our careers, are not in that privileged position to be able to just think about acting, right? They sure think about acting in between the cafe job and the paying off the student loan and the flatting situation that I'm trying to get out of. And so I've developed that patience because I think it is the only way that I'm capable of retaining those long-term relationships in a way as well. Yeah, it's this delicate balance of being very sensitive to pushing just hard enough to kind of keep the fire going, but not too hard that somebody kind of tips over into having to make a choice because I'm asking too much of them, and either the acting gives or the acting interface with me gives, or the personal relationship gives, or the work gives, or
Mm.
family time gives. And I'm really, like I'm a stickler for this thing of that is not the way to be an actor. Like, it's not the way to live the life of an actor. And certainly there are many actors who do live that way, and I'm not saying they can't and they shouldn't, but it's not the thing that I want to promote. This either or, the sacrifice, the burning the candle at both ends, suffering artist
Mm.
trope.
Can you tell me a little bit about the actor's life, or this thing you said, the idea that you're promoting, I suppose, like, and this doesn't have to be the crystallized version of what this is, but what are some of the aspects of that you're kind of standing behind, of what an actor's life is, and patterns of focus, and how we
Yeah.
go about our day in relation to the other parts of being a human being, and are they different? you know
Yeah, I think for some people they want them to be as well. They want to be able to create that division, and say acting is over here, acting feels like this, acting, and I feel like this when I act, and then I have this other me, the friend me, the lover me, the daughter, son, brother me, the employee me, and let's keep them separate, please, because then I can, compartmentalize, and I can, switch hats, and I'm an artist now and I use these parts of me, and I'm something else now and I use different parts. And certainly, at its most basic, of course, we do all of the time. We're constantly switching roles in that way. But I think it's as simple as, in some ways, like, what is it? And I'm sure I've put this question in front of you before, specifically with this question, this way of wording it. What is it what would it be for acting to be a lifestyle?
Mm.
What is it to make acting a lifestyle, not a career? So it's less about the activity of learning a script, doing an audition, performing in a short film, or being in a play. That of course is the activity of an actor, and one could say, well, then you are an actor because you act. And then there are all of these soft skills. That'd be another way of thinking about it. If those are the hard skills, there are the soft skills sides of being an actor, which I'm not sure I'm myself, people that I want to work with, that I'm interested in them switching those on and off. Things like empathy, things like patience, things like generosity,
Mm.
observation, uh,
Creativity.
creativity,
Mm.
curiosity, playfulness. Like, we know these words get thrown around all the time inside acting rooms, as qualities of a good actor. But at its simplest too, we're not inside acting spaces enough, I think, to be constantly flexing the muscles that we want to be flexing, so that we can feel ready, for those moments when they arrive, for that big audition, for that big opportunity to show a casting director or director that I'm the choice that they should be making. And those spaces are joyful and we want to be in them more, but we can't be in them as much as we want to, because we've got to pay the bills. So if we can work out ways of stacking, right, of layering things up and going, me flexing my muscles of generosity, of play, of curiosity, of creativity, if they're not confined to the acting class, to the little moment of practice that I do at home on my acting, to the audition, if I can be using the same machine, which I am because it's me, the same instrument inside my interaction with the dairy owner when I go down to buy the loaf of bread in the
Mm.
morning, then I'm attending to my acting without having to play a character, without having to learn, or recite a monologue. I'm attending to the same muscles that I'm wanting to be available to me inside my acting. Uh, I won't pretend like you've not heard me say this before. Justin's heard me say this, and some other people may have, and this might be a new John-ism to others. And I certainly don't say it much now because it's clumsy, but I used to say, prefacing, it's a clumsy, silly statement, but ugly people make ugly actors. Ugly people make ugly actors. And what I really was trying to work out how to say there, and I kind of liked it because it was pointy, it was provocative, it was naughty, right? And, people get tied in knots when they hear things like that. What do you mean? What do you mean ugly? And I'm not talking about physical appearance. I'm talking about ugliness of soul, of character, of spirit, of human. And there's something about if we crave, if we desire to be an actor who is generous, who is sensitive, who has the ability to and the capacity to enter into other lives, other story worlds, other belief systems, religions, sexual preferences, history, times in history, all of those different things that we have this beautiful privilege to do. If we want to be able to do that with sensitivity and truth, whatever that means, so on and so forth, then that requires something of us, right? And maybe we can imagine our way into it. Maybe we can pretend our way into it, perform our way into it, or maybe there's another way where we're asking ourselves to be able to touch into something of all of those points of difference, to expand ourselves, to not judge, going back to this ugly word, right? To not judge the difference, to not psychologically pull apart and make sense of the difference, but just to inhabit it, to experience it in some kind of way. And so therefore, if we flip it around and make it a positive, if ugly people make ugly actors, then beautiful people make beautiful actors. So what is it to be a beautiful person? What is beauty? What is it to stand in front of another human being when I'm buying my milk and actually look at them as another human being and thank them for the exchange, to thank the bus driver when I hop off the bus for the role that he took in helping me get to where I needed to go that day, to take a breath when, somebody cuts me off and not just jump into, slamming my fist on the horn and shouting obscenities. And it can all start to sound very kind of Zen or something, right? Or very sort of cross fingers, get into a lotus position and, and meditate. And maybe there is a relationship there, but I'm not talking about that specifically. I'm talking about, I think, maybe I'm talking about the responsibility for us to ask what's required of me if I'm going to be able to do all these things I want to do as an actor. Like what am I needing to stretch in myself as a human that can sometimes happen inside the acting room, inside the class, but actually it's not confined to there. So what is it not to confine it to there?
That makes me think of something I heard Marie Forleo say, who's this wonderful author. And the example she was using was, she wanted to be a dancer and she was living in New York. And she realized that she couldn't just ask the best of herself when she was going for this dance audition or when she was meeting with industry people, because, she came home and her apartment was a mess. The dishes weren't done, the bed wasn't done. And so there was this realization that, and I think I've said this phrase to you before, is how you do anything is how you do everything. So there's not this compartmentalization of, I'm going to show up really, really empathetic, playful, kind, all of those wonderful things that we need as actors. I'm way less likely to do that if I'm behaving in a really different way in the rest of my life. And so the turning point for her was, She had a kind of a not great apartment, but she treated it like it was the best. When it was
Oh,
time to do the dishes, he's bringing her all to do the dishes. I'm going to be the best dishwasher. I'm going to bring flowers into my house. And then, of course, everything starts to elevate because your brain doesn't switch on when you just tell it to, if you're not stretching it in the other way. So I think that's it tends to be true. And do you think that is there some belief that actors hold in general that kind of prevents them from doing that, or that it helps them to make another choice? Like, what is a thing? What is that?
yeah, I think there's something of a belief around acting being hard. Like acting steals from you in some way or requires, it takes, everything takes energy. Um,
Mm,
so everything is energy expended in some way, but I think there's a belief that many actors have that acting is hard and it asks a lot of me. So no, thank you. I don't want to have to try to be an actor while I'm washing my dishes. It's hard enough being an actor when I'm doing my scene in the acting class. To have to do that when I'm talking to the bus driver or when I'm on the phone to my mum just feels like way too much work. And why would I do that? Why would I,
mm,
put myself through that additional pain because acting class is painful enough, right? Or it steals enough from me. It asks enough of me to not have to do it elsewhere. I think there's something of that I've encountered when I've unpacked this with actors in different ways, because I think by and large the first thing I meant when I proposed this idea of like, what would it be to have acting as a lifestyle? Not this thing that you do in little pockets, but you are an actor in every interaction and every moment of the day. They're like going, oh my gosh, like
mm.
I would want to give up if that were the case. So I'd want to quit. And that's a really interesting moment to press pause and step back from and go, what's acting for you then? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
what, why is that the case? How does acting make you feel? How do you relate to acting? Because and just to kind of tie some things together, you, um, use the dishes as an example. And yeah, absolutely, there's always a choice in those moments. So, like, I have a choice to be mindless about this and to be as disengaged as possible, with the task in front of me, or what we're currently talking about. This idea of
Mm,
I can do this with pride. I can make these the cleanest dishes that I've ever cleaned. Or I can just enjoy the task for what it is, or like I say, this other version of things, and they're both possible and they're both legit as choices, right? They just sort of take us down different paths.
mm,
And I've said via your prompting that I think maybe the resistance to doing the dishes in this all-in way is because it feels like it steals from us in some way. And then I go back to you asking me one of the first questions and me talking about how easeful it is for me to roll out of bed in the morning, that it's not hard work and I'm not disengaged from the day. I'm not disengaged from the work
mm,
ahead of me that day because it's a choice to like I'm living the thing. Of course, I'm living the thing. That's why why I'm talking about it, or I'm talking about through experience. But I'm living the lifestyle, so it is easeful because I've worked out how to let every moment be a moment that is one of engagement, not disengagement. Of the task is to walk the dogs. What is this about? What's an opportunity for?
mm,
What can I do better today, or how can I go about this in a way that's more joyful or full of discovery in some way, as opposed to walking the dogs and holding the phone up in front of my face the whole time because I need to get to that email. Or I do think there's a like we're in this. I feel it more now than ever. So it does feel to me like it's something that is increasing, has been increasing over time, this way of living our lives where it feels like no matter how much time we have, we never have enough time to do everything that is being asked of us. That people feel so time pressured, and everything, the majority of people's energy gets spent on how do I fit it all in? How do I cram it all in? And how do I negotiate in the way that is going to be least painful for me, in terms of I'm going to have to snip a bit off there and snip a bit off here to make it all fit in. And I don't know. I mean, like you gotta try it to, try the other way to, I guess, feel out what it might be. But I, uh, I think I just live a life a little bit of just letting certain things go. So that's actually not important. That's not important, or
Yep.
it's not important now. And I'm not going to do this thing of like layering it, take the dogs for a walk while I'm writing an email at the same time.
Yeah.
If the email is important, then I'm going to do the email in that time when I sit down to write the emails, and I'm going to walk the dogs when I choose to walk the dogs. And that other thing is going to be for another day, because that's not fitting into my day today.
So that sounds like there's a way that you're viewing the world there that seems to really empower you toward this thing of stacking. Because there's two kinds of stacking maybe that I'm hearing. There's the stacking of people trying to cram things in and force things to work inside of their idea of what those things need to be. So the challenge I hear you laying as well is, what is it to wash the dishes as an actor? Or what is it to eat food even as an actor? And that might sound absurd to people. And the person who's wanting to maximize, and they might think that means playing a character while you do the dishes, or eating as a character or something. But there's something in the way that you're viewing the world of, letting things be. It is what it is, and it's different to a complacency I sense and I see actually in your work. Is it is what it is doesn't necessarily have to mean that it is not good, or that it is, easy doesn't necessarily mean lazy. And yeah, I'm wondering about the, what is it in you, the meaning you make of things, or how you see tasks, or how you see days, or things that need to be done. How do you see those that allow you to move through them with ease? Because of course, we all have these things that we get tight about, things coming up and stuff, but what is it about the way that you see it that helps you to move like that?
I was listening to a podcast the other day about
Well, podcastception. Yeah.
layers and layers.
Yeah, it's stacking. That's exactly what we're talking about.
There we are.
Yeah.
Not about acting or about acting. And it doesn't matter, but I can't even remember what the person was talking about, what the bigger topic was, where this was said. But they said inside it, proposed this, or we're on this quest, we're inside this question of what would it be to be able to go to the dentist and have your tooth drilled without anesthetic? What would it be to go to the dentist and open your mouth and have the dentist come towards you with a right, without having numbed your gums and and your roots and your ability to sense everything that's going on? And I think part of what I've become better at being able to do, and certainly part of what I do inside the training with the actors that I work with as well, is guide us to continuously try to increase our capacity to sit with anything, to sit with pain, to sit with strength, to sit with discomfort, to sit with an itch, to sit with water in our mouth. We've not done that, but you know what I mean? Like it could be anything. To sit with boredom, And that, for me, is part of the key, or part of the solution as to why I can do that, why I have the ability to let things be, because it's not, and like you say, without it being dismissive, without it being switching off or pushing away and just, just compartmentalizing, putting it in a box and, and somebody else's problem. Like, how do we sit 100% with something, but not go into the drama of it, not get kind of caught up in the drama of the, it needs solving right now, or if I don't do this in the right way, then I'm going to be judged for being bad, or
Can I tell you what is coming to mind as you're saying this? No, yeah, as we were touring Mrs. Krishnan's party in Chicago, and the Merry Wives of Windsor was opening downstairs. We were in the upstairs space, me and Kalyani Nagarajan, who I went to drama school with, if you know.
And just to be clear, for my brain, you're talking about the Shakespeare play, only because I know there's an opera as well.
Oh, opera! Hey, this is a good link in, because
I might be wrong. The opera people might think, you got that wrong. Anyway, the Shakespeare play.
Shakespeare play Merry Wives was opening downstairs.
Is it a Shakespeare? It is. I'm now just totally questioning how much I know about the world. Okay, good.
It's definitely, it is a Shakespeare, because we were at the Shakespeare Theatre of Chicago with our funny little New Zealand play. Yeah. And anyway, they had created this awesome happy opening night video for us, because they had production week and we were there, which was just so cool, because that's we had not met them, and their video was, there's 30 of them, I think, maybe more with the crew, and it was someone with an iPhone running down a hallway full of this crew and cast, saying happy opening night, Mrs. Krishnan's party, in their American accents, people we'd never met. And it was so cool. And so we opened before them. And then a couple nights later, it was their opening night, and we were running late, and we knew that we wanted to make something for them. And I remember we were late because we were taking a bus. It was a whole thing. And our pre-show was eating into our pre-show. And suddenly I was like, how are we going to do this thing? Like, it's got to be good and clever and things. And Cal had the idea to essentially do what they did. There's only three of us, Andrew, Cal and I, and have someone film us down a hallway, and we just kind of replace each other, and we run down to it. Like, there's so many people. And I remember thinking, okay, we need to get this right, and maybe we have a little practice, like just to see logistically how it's gonna go. Like, where will I run? Because we had a person from the theatre filming us, and Cal was like, "Nah, let's just do it. We're just gonna do it." And I was like, "Oh, like, I don't think that's gonna be good and stuff." And this was just such a great gift from Cal, and one of her real strengths is that thing in her that says, we're going to do it. And I distinctly remember thinking it's gonna be bad, like, and then, so because we didn't have a lot of time, I agreed. And then we did it, and it stumbled, but it was true. It was real. We stumbled around, and it was silly and fun, and we tried our best. Took us 30 seconds, and we sent that. And I remember thinking after that, and thinking, man, if we had not recorded that, and I had gone with my desire to practice it and then run it, the second one would have lost the life. It would have completely lost the life. And so I was just really grateful in that moment to Cal, because that's, as I say, that's part of her genius and her bravery and her conditioning as an improviser, as a comedian, as a writer, is to, no, it is perfect right now. And yeah, as you're talking about that thing of not over dramatizing or not overthinking, that's just really alive to me. And is there a way that we train that? Or I suppose there is a way that you are training it, but how do we get used to that? How do we discern what needs drama? Does anything need drama? And because that took, 25 seconds, and the Merry Wives loved it, by the way, which was really cool. They were thrilled because it was full of life. So
what about the husbands?
The husbands were not.
They
No,
didn't.
yeah,
No,
they
they weren't
didn't. They
married.
didn't like.
Just the
They were in
wife.
the opera. They were, yeah. So yeah, how do we train that in ourselves? Either as, yeah, sure, actors, but of course in anything in our lives that we think requires more work than perhaps is necessary.
Have you ever done the cold shower thing?
Oh, Will told me about this. Yeah, who's also in class with us. So tell me. I just got kind of the little snippets.
I'm not sure when it originated. I mean, cold showers have been around for a long time, but this idea um, of building up the resistance or the resilience, is a better word, building up the resilience to pure cold water at the end of a shower. And you start with 10 seconds and then you try to increase it over the course of a week, say to a minute. The final minute of your shower, you go 100% cold and see if you can handle it. And I think that's an example of, and it's cold exposure therapy, and there's a lot of thoughts around what that does to lots of different sort of parts of the body systems and things. But on one level, what it's or the jumping in the doing cold water swims in the middle of winter, jumping in the lake in the middle of winter kind of thing. Those things are as much about training this thing as they are about the changes that go on in the body.
Oh.
And so people have been doing this for a long time, have been kind of cottoned onto it, not just actors, right? People have been aware of how easily we can become unstable in the way that we're living our lives, so that something comes along and gives us a little nudge and we get really thrown off and we sort of get buffeted around by everything. And I'm not saying, I want to be clear in case we are being misunderstood here, it's for me not about switching off. So it's not about disengaging or dissociating from an experience. It's also not about kumbayaing the experience away and just trying to be in a happy place. And that might be appropriate and completely fine. Say meditation, for example, is not the answer to what I'm interested in with an actor. So, so this idea of sort of bringing yourself to a place of calm, because we as actors are required to, depending on the role, but required to live inside, move through, have an audience believe that we are experiencing a full range of human emotional experience. And sometimes those emotional experiences can be very, very taxing on the human. If anyone's seen Hamnet recently with Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal and others, dealing with the loss of their child, so intense grief, probably not, putting things side by side and comparing for the sake of comparison, but, probably some of the hardest grief a human would ever have to endure is the loss of a child. So there's something interesting in the job of the actor where we are, whatever technique we use, however we go about it, we are required to have an audience believe that what they're watching is true. Like that's part and parcel of being a good actor. And so on some level, we have to engage with that very, very difficult thing, jumping into the freezing cold lake. And part of the training we need to do is to not try to move ourselves out of that discomfort earlier than the character is going to move outside of that discomfort themselves. So it's not for us to decide how the character manages the freezing cold water. It's for us to have the resilience as the actor to stay in as long as the character needs to stay in the freezing cold lake. And that can require some some training, depending on, how somebody first meets acting, meets that moment in acting. Some people may have been built that way already, and they can just kind of go in and do it, and others of us have to train. So, to your question of how do you, that was part of the question here, like what's
Yeah, yeah.
the how of it?
Mm,
Um, so I do think it is like the shower, the cold shower idea. It is certainly about capacity building. I don't think it's throw somebody off the cliff. Don't throw somebody into the freezing cold lake and go, sink or swim. You're either an actor or you're not. If you can handle this, you can be an actor. If you can't, sorry, goodbye.
like the witch
Um,
trials, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and and that's certainly a way. It's just not the way that I do it because
Mm,
it's just not the way I'm built. If anything, I do believe that most people have the capacity to be an actor if they choose to be, but some people will just take longer than others or need a little
mm,
more guidance in those earlier stages. So I'm more like, well, let's try 10 seconds. And this is coming back to the patience thing, right? Let's try 10 seconds under the cold water. You're able to handle that? Awesome. Should we go for 20? Should we go for 30? So the majority of the exercises that I do with an actor are on a really fundamental level. Exactly that. They're about capacity building inside the extremity of what it is to be a human being.
mm,
Not just the negative either. So it's easy to focus on the loss of a child as let's dig into that for grief. But we have, a full range of different experiences available to us as human beings and as actors, the ability then to use those things to express different parts of somebody's story. So I think all of them are, we can ask that of ourselves. Do I have capacity for more joy? Like
mm,
like personally, I'm a pretty serious person, or I like to think I am. So I spend a lot of time inside serious conversations, having a serious view of the world, trying to solve the problems that I perceive in front of me. So certainly, like I know that is an area that I constantly need to be reassessing for myself and finding more ability to hold more joy. Um,
mm,
and this is funny, eh? Like I'm well aware as we're talking that it's easy for somebody who perhaps hasn't worked in the way that I work, that you are familiar with as well, to have pictures in their head of when I'm talking about growing capacity for joy, that what I mean is that I don't know, jumping on a trampoline, wearing a tutu, laughing at the top of my lungs. It could look like that, but often the work doesn't look quite like that. It's not about
mm,
think of the happiest thing or think of the saddest thing, think of the most disgusting thing, the thing that angers you the most. It's not really that way of approaching it, or that's not the training that I engage in. So we're not working psychologically. You know this. I'm teaching you to suck eggs by saying this to you, but
Well, I think it'd be a great
for
moment
the
maybe
benefit
to,
of, yeah, I'll just finish
yeah,
my thought and then you can take
yes,
us wherever you want. For the benefit
yeah,
of
yeah.
people who aren't quite sure what I'm talking about, um, a lot of the way that I interface with an actor is around physical experiences. So, how do we grow our capacity to, or how do we build our body to be able to? And this is where the shower or the jumping into the cold lake example, even though we don't do that, is a useful one because it's about how do I grow my body's ability to endure the discomfort of the freezing cold water, of the extreme temperature, of that strong force against my body, um, so on and so forth, because of the relationship that those examples have to human emotional experience.
Mm. Well, what I was thinking as you were saying that as well was, how would you explain to a person on the street, your approach to acting?
Yeah, I think what acting is becoming less and less about, so I'll go with what it's not. First of all, because I think a lot of, it's probably good to pop a few balloons as well, like burst a few
Mm.
bubbles as to what people think acting is. It's not about learning lines, and it's not about putting on funny voices, and it's not about making ourselves replicate moments. So, I open the door and there's my long lost brother who I thought was dead. It's not about teaching ourselves or having the skill to, in a moment, make myself look shocked in a way that you would believe that I'm shocked.
Mm.
And then, of course, it's exactly about all of those things. It is about that, and it is
Yeah,
about
yeah,
putting on a
yeah,
funny
yeah.
voice, and it is about whatever I said first. But
Mm.
in terms of how we arrive at that point where you're thinking that about, oh my gosh, how did you remember all those lines? That those are part and parcel of what it is to be an actor. But those aren't the things that we're focusing on. Those are such rudimentary skills that it's like saying to, if you're trying to teach an alien how to be a human being, it'd be like an alien saying, "Oh my gosh, how do you breathe?"
Mm. Yeah, it
So
almost makes me think.
fundamental, the thing of learning the lines, the thing of all of those things that somebody looks at and goes, "Oh gosh, it would be so hard to be an actor because you've got to do all of these things."
Yeah.
Um, they're not really, for me, what acting, and certainly what I put in front of an actor, they're not what acting's about. They are required, but they're not what acting's about.
Well, I wanted to hear you finish that because of what acting is, but what that
Yeah.
also makes me think of is the difference between the audience mindset and the craftsperson mindset.
Mm,
And those things you described, learning lines, as actors, how often you heard that when your auntie comes and watch, how'd you learn all those lines?
mm,
The funny voices, or indeed replicating things. Because I've seen that on professional rehearsal rooms and sets
yep.
of people affectating. I don't know what the right word is, but they're like, oh, I'll kind of say it like this, or, this is how you act surprised. And those, like you say, those are things that are a result of what acting is. And
Yeah.
from the outside, that is what the audience sees. And so when an actor is coming from the point of view of an audience, then they're kind of setting themselves up for that thing of what acting perhaps isn't, because
Mm,
they are the result of the other work, and the other work is the work of a craftsperson. It's the same as an audience watching a magician and seeing that they make the thing disappear, and so they try and do the moves that make the thing disappear, but behind that is something that you never even see, and it's as an audience member, it's not your business to see.
yeah.
You're just seeing the result. And I think that's a really important distinction, because perhaps in your experience of training actors and seeing young actors, coming through drama school and auditioning for drama school, this mismatch or orientation of I like that thing that I see, I want to do that, and then trying to do the end product, Um, and there's inherent mystery in acting as well, and it's so intangible that it is quite difficult to nail down those the behind the scenes thing, I suppose. But anyway, I'll let you continue on that
It'd be
line of
like
thought.
eating an amazing piece of cake, right? Somebody, or a muffin or something, and somebody gives it, you're like, oh my gosh. And, if you've got no concept of baking and
Yeah.
and then you're going, I need to make this for myself. We just grab at what we can grab at, right? So you
Mm.
can see that it's got gooey bits in it and it tastes like berries of some sort. So you're going to assume that it's got berries in it. And, but I would
Mm.
imagine if somebody had no concept of baking, they'd not, used a recipe before and baked something. So much of what goes into a cake you wouldn't imagine was in there. I don't know if I would
Mm.
think that eggs were in a cake
Yeah.
based on the
Yeah.
end product.
Yeah, yeah. This also makes me think of, when you're in drama school and you're doing the kinds of exercises you do at drama school, and indeed in
Mm,
the classes that we do, um, I pop out sometimes. I'm like, People wouldn't like anyone in my family seeing what I'm doing right now, listening to the room through my toes. It's like there's eggs in the cake. It's
Yeah.
like, how does that possibly? And of course, through, the context of training everything, it totally does. But yeah, there's this syntax, and there's these things that we kind of just have to do. Yeah.
I think so. If it's not that, if that's not what acting is, but we can
Mm.
understand why an audience grabs a hold of those things, that they're the easiest things for them to be able to understand from the outside, assessing the end product and trying to back engineer in their brain what got us to this point. Well, they had to learn a whole lot of words, you know, and they're putting on a funny voice, and
Mm.
they cried over there, and that's weird because that's my brother and he never cries. So
Yeah,
sure,
yeah,
we can
yeah.
understand how they get to that point, but I think and I'm going to be just as kind of cryptic now and trying to give an answer probably, but I think what acting is something of, I think it's kind of close to being a programmer or something.
You have to tell me about that. And what's that mean?
And like a coder is what I mean there, like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
computer
yeah.
programmer, a coder. We're writing software. So we've got to have an understanding of the machine that's going to read the software, or that's going to run the software. So it's a thing of kind of understanding operating system. And let's say the operating system is the human body, brain, spirit, all of the bits of me that get used, voice, all of those things that can be perceived on some level as the human that the camera captures if it's a film, say.
Mm.
So that's kind of a given in a way that we understand the machine, how it works, what exists, like what the components are, and then how those components speak to one another, like to do different things. So that's sort of part of the work, part of the training, part
Mm.
of the skill of an actor, and then the other part is to write the software. So this is the coder thing, the programmer thing, that every role is a different software program. It's a different,
Mm.
it's the same machine because you're the person playing all of the different roles, but you're not yourself inside each of them. Or this is a choice that we need to make as actors, right? So there are kind of, if we to kind of slice acting into two very big camps. There's one camp, one idea around how to approach acting, whereas we're approaching it via ourselves, via our understanding of the world, and every role is in some way a version, not a virgin. Sometimes we play virgins too, but a
Yeah.
version of us.
Mm.
Or maybe we're a virgin and our character's not. Let's not leave
Yeah,
anyone
well,
out
that will
there.
be a program you'd have to write, though. So you're suggesting that would be us kind of reusing a software, perhaps that we're born with in a way, or that we're
Bingo.
adding to because we've learned how to project our voice, and we've
Yeah,
learned how
yeah.
to.
Yeah, so we're kind of doing a little upgrade,
Mm.
but it's still the same. Still the same. Whether you say it's a program, maybe an operating system, that might be a better one, like that, for people that are geeky in that way. That what you're talking about now, I would say you're probably doing like doing OS upgrades. So there are slight little
Mm.
tweaks that go on, but essentially we're using our own program that we've been running the whole time with just a little
Mm.
tweak, or there's a little add-on. I plug in a little peripheral which gives me the ability to all of a sudden sound like this, which I
Mm.
don't
Mm.
myself, but I'm still using the same OS. So that's one camp of actors, and then there's this other camp, which is the camp that I sit in the way that I position myself and the way that I interact with actors and what I promote and what I um, ask of an actor is to become the programmer, to become the coder, where we learn how to actually write or build a completely new operating system. So I think that's what acting is. Acting is pressing go, pressing run on a completely different bit of software. And so it's not about if we go back to the thing of how do you know all of those lines, the script is not the character. I'll say that one again. Any actors listening, pay heed. The script is not the character. The words that have been written on the page for you to say are not who you are. There are sometimes really, really strong links there where we can use one to support the other in some way, of going, well, of course, my character would only ever really say it this way because of who they are, or vice versa, because of who they are. The words come out like this, but the words that have been written for the character to say are not who they are. In the same way that I can have the conversation with you that I'm having now, which is spontaneous. It's not pre-written. It's not scripted. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, as are you. And that is in some way letting people who don't know me know who I am. They're working out who I am through the words that I'm saying. But I could also read from a book that somebody else has written, and you'd still pick up a lot of who I am from that.
But we wouldn't pick everything up.
Not
But we
everything.
would pick a lot of it up. Yeah.
In the same way that you're not going to pick everything up from this conversation either. And the job isn't to pick everything up. Like in certain moments when I'm in teacher mode, people will get parts of me, but not other parts of me. The people that only ever know me inside that kind of teaching space, as a student of mine, will know me pretty well because I'm pretty open inside that space. But there will be parts of me that they haven't seen because I'm wearing a hat there and I'm being very controlled around the way that I operate. Like I am overly patient in that space. I'm intentionally being as patient as I can be patient. So they will hopefully not really know much of the irritable side of me. Or that kind of comes out in a different way. I am still, I get irritable, but that is, there are other people in my life who are privileged to see that, and not this other space where I choose to dampen that in some way. Or I could literally read the phone book. For people who don't know what that is, once upon a time, before the advent of smartphones and everything kind of landing inside computer world, we literally had very, very big, thick books which had the phone numbers of every single person in the country in them. We didn't have a New Zealand one, but you had like regional ones. So you had Auckland, and you had every phone number in Auckland, alphabetical by surname, of the person who paid the phone bill. So anyway, like you could literally read, Hunter J. I'm not going to say my address, but blah 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 address, phone number 2731. I could literally read something or the dictionary. I could read dictionary definitions out to you, and you would still get the John version of that because anything. I could do the dishes. I could have a cold shower. It's going to be John doing those things because even when there are no words and I'm just scrubbing the dishes, there is something about the way that I engage in that action which holds the story of me.
That is so well put, because the actor in me recognizes that need to be the whole character, I want to say across a piece, but in every line, this kind of in a way, one-dimensional thing of this is everything. But, those examples you're saying and like the way you're looking at me now, the way you're nodding, all of that is information that,
Yes.
if it was a character that we're reading. And I think that's a really fundamental and important shift that we have to make as actors, which is you only get 2 pages in an audition or, 90 pages across a play. And our responsibility is to bring the character to life within that. frame of their
Yeah.
life. And if
And if we
I was going to
accept,
say,
shall I go? If we accept
yeah,
what we're both now saying, that the nod that you saw me do,
mm,
my little of affirmation, the way that I'm looking at you with a certain intensity, etc., etc. If we were to say that all of those things are part of the acting that is required to accurately play Jon,
mm,
right, for the actor that's going to play me based on this recording, if we're to agree to that, to say that all of those things are Jon, and then we're to be that actor who acts everything that the character does, could you imagine how complex that becomes in your head? If you're going, I need to nod like Jon, I need to like Jon, I need to look at Justin when he says that thing like
well,
Jon,
that's
I
the
need,
audience point of view, right? That's the person coming at it from the external
and it's
result of a
and
person
it's
creating character.
and it's however many, like within a minute, you could probably list hundreds, if not 1,000 things that you could look at and see and go, well, that's very uniquely Jon in some way. So,
Mm,
actor, have at it. You need to do all of that. And then there is this very conscious process of nod like Jon, blink like Jon, go with your voice like Jon.
yeah.
That would make you not want to act, I don't think. I don't
Mm,
think you would want to act
mm,
if that were the game. So I think a lot of that gets left to the side when people are operating in that other way. They actually don't have that kind of all-encompassing character thing, or or we're kind of running this like whose operating system are you running? Maybe there are some things that feel
yeah, yeah.
Jon-like, and there are a whole lot of things that are just Justin. Like Justin's nodding the way that Justin nods, and Justin's going the way
Mm,
that Justin does, because your brain just doesn't have enough ability to consciously make a choice every millisecond to do these things that aren't you. But if we have the ability to build the operating system that is Jon, give it anything. Give it the phone book, give it this recording to, the transcription of this recording, give it the Hamlet monologue, uh, give it anything, and because the operating system is the Jon operating system, everything will be Jon-like.
uh,
Everything will be Jon-like. The script that you've been given to audition for me with, which supposedly has words that I would say in a particular way, and then anything. Going for a walk with the dogs, where no words are said, you'll still do it like Jon, without having to think about it consciously. Without your brain's still
yeah,
involved, but without you going, oh, how do I lift my foot? How do
yeah,
I
yeah.
breathe now that I'm a little bit tired? How do I call out to the dog because he ran away?
Because I totally I feel that in me, as an actor sometimes
Mm.
um is that voice. And then I think about, the first time I saw There Will Be Blood with Daniel Day-Lewis, and knowing what I know about his approach to acting, which is, it's a whole other conversation, but my sense is in his own way, he has created an architecture. He has created a software.
Yeah,
When I first
yeah,
watched that movie, it's something like 5 minutes with no dialogue. There's no lines, but of course he's digging that hole and he gets injured in the mine. Um, and I remember watching that and kind of being like, oh, how would I do that? How would I do that? I would just be, and I've had to do stuff silently as in perform actions, and it's so easy to get in your head, and it's kind of this when you're at that point, you're already trapped. I wonder, is there a thing to do at that point? Say you're on the rehearsal room floor or you're blocking, or is it too late by then? Do you know what I mean? Like when you're asked, okay, you're going to walk across, you're going to get your diary. This is the director telling the character.
yeah.
You're going to sit down, you're going to light your pipe. You know, If you're thinking, how would I do that? At that point, is it too late? And if not, what can be done at that point, or what should have been done, I suppose?
Yeah, well, few of us have the luxury that DDL has had of
Mm,
time. Wasn't Lincoln 7 years of character prep?
mm,
Um, and all of his processes have been ones, as the myths go, that where he spent a long, long time digging around inside and building and prepping those characters. But most of us, again, aren't yet at the point in our careers where we have the luxury of being able to, take the phone off the hook, as it were. And I'm using all of these things that you youngins won't understand. These are
I
phones
understand them.
that used to have hooks that they hung
Yeah,
and
yeah,
cords that
yeah.
they were attached to, where you basically mean that people can't get in touch with you, and you
Mm,
dedicate every waking moment to the character. Most of us don't have that luxury, so we end up inside rehearsal rooms, as per your question, where maybe something gets thrown at us and we feel like we aren't quite sure how to have the character uh, experience, or live that moment, that moment of walking across the room and picking up
mm,
the coffee cup, etc., etc. And so your question was like, is it too late? Well, yeah, in that moment, it may not be you're just going to make a choice, right? Like I'm the biggest one for, I think, one of the things that I would say an actor needs to get really good at is working out how to get into action as quickly as possible. How
mm,
do I how do I take the information that's coming at me and move it into action? And by action, I mean literally doing something, speaking, moving as quickly as possible, because that will teach us something. We're not going to
mm,
learn very much. Maybe we learn some, but I think it's overrated how much we can learn about how to act well through sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at our script, thinking about it, and imagining it in our heads. At a certain point in
Oh,
time, you just literally got
the image
to.
that you've painted is
Yeah.
is is haunting, because I've got some script work to do, later this evening, and you described my internal image of what that
What it
was.
could look like, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
what it could look like.
so in that moment, where something is thrown at you that you feel unprepared for in some way, you've got to make a choice to do something. And you could hold up proceedings and say, can we have a break so I can go away and do some preparation to amend
Mm,
my software programs so that I can walk across the room and pick up the coffee cup without thinking about it, wasting everyone else's time. Or you
mm,
can just let it be clunky. It's not going to be the end of the world, and it's a rehearsal, right? So you are mechanically going to walk across that room, and it's not going to feel like the character, and you're going to beat yourself up a little bit because you hadn't prepared for that. But then you've got all of that time in between the end of that rehearsal and the start of the
mm,
next one to do some work, to build it in, so the next time you come back to that, or another moment of walking somewhere without lines where you have to interact with a prop pops up, that you've got
mm,
that bit of the the software amended so that you can perambulate, walk, without having to think about how you
mm.
walk. I was watching a clip of Jamie Dornan talking about the Irish actor talking about walking, because he walks funny. His words, not mine. His own description of himself. He walks on his toes, and they were in the first days of filming one of his darker roles, I think, when he sort of played sort of dark and mysterious and dangerous. And the director and producer came up to him after their first kind of couple of takes or whatever, and said, "Is this walk a character thing?" And so, like, that moment, he almost wanted to say yes, because he was aware that people had talked about the way that he walks before or whatever.
Mm.
But even he said no, this is just the way that I walk. And then they started trying to give him some advice as to well, maybe you take longer strides, or trying
Oh,
to
wow.
correct his walk so that it lined up more with how they felt the character would walk, because
Mm,
it was because he walked on his toes. It was too bouncy, I think, is the way that he sort of tells the
right.
story. It was too kind of up, too energized and kind of light.
Yeah.
And they wanted to find more darkness and heaviness or whatever in the character.
Mm,
But yeah, sometimes we just meet those moments where something we hadn't thought about before is brought to light
mm,
for whatever reason. And in that moment, I do think you've got to assess and work out what the most appropriate course of action is. And it's often, I think, if you're on set, you're in a rehearsal room with a whole lot of other people, it's probably best just to get through it and just to store
mm,
it away and say, I've got some work to do before the next rehearsal on my own. Like I say, rather than trying to kind of work out how to bring it into your system and the way that you prefer to work. Um, because it's low stakes stuff as well. It's a rehearsal. They're testing grounds. They're places where people are trying things out and getting them
mm.
wrong. They're not, um, and it's unlikely that you would be given that kind of direction very, very close to. I'm thinking theatre now, and so maybe this doesn't apply so much for film. But you're not going to be given that kind of big direction very, very close to opening night. Sometimes you are, so I know.
Mm.
You
But it
will.
also feels
I
like
think there's always time. I'll just cover my bases here by saying there is always time. There will always be time to do something. It might not be the way that you like to work. You might not get 7 years to
mm,
to build his walk. But if you've got 10 minutes, you've got enough time to do something, rather than just default to this idea of like over dramatizing things and kind of becoming this all or nothing moment of going, okay, well, I've got 10 minutes. Even, we're going to have a cup of tea break soon. I won't have the cup of tea and I'll go outside by myself and just do a little bit of something.
well, that reminds me of the story of the Merry Wives, because there's part of me, my alarm bells go off in that, where I'm like, I don't have the 7 years, but 10 minutes is 10 minutes, and things don't like it. That doesn't have to be big, and I'm just reminded again of that, that orientation of ease, really, where you
Yeah.
in that moment you can tell
Yeah.
yourself the story of I don't have 7 minutes, I don't have 7 years, and then that 10 minutes is not enough. But going along this thought process you're saying of getting into action as fast as possible and, not staying in your head. And there's that moment, when we're all got our scripts and, we've done the read through, that's all very good. It's like, right, let's stand up. And there's it's kind of your heart can lurch in that moment of like, at the end of the day, we are playing people, and our ability to just get into action as quick as possible, because that's probably the scariest thing, it's feeling like a fool doing the wrong thing. But how else are we going to bring it to life? By taking the 10 minutes and doing it 10 times in those 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
by virtue of doing that you've expanded you've expanded the map, and so
For sure.
you'll be better off in either either
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. For sure.
Mm. Um, I I don't want to take your whole life, but I do have more questions I would love to ask you.
Go on then.
Um,
Do it.
and no doubt we'll have many, or we will have many conversations like this. Um, but I was thinking about Estel, the voice. What did I? Oh, yeah. Um, Estel, the voice technique, and your relationship to that early on. And one thing I was thinking just before the call that I'm glad I've remembered is I remember when you took us through some of that Estel stuff at drama school, one of the fundamental beliefs was any noise another person can make, you can make as well. You have the apparatus in order to do it. Um, and I wonder, to you, does that extend to anything? Do you know what I mean? Like seeing an
Yeah.
actor do a thing and I'm like, I want to do that, or, making a noise or whatever.
Yeah.
And to what extent is your just orientation around acting and actor training, and also latching on to something you said, which was anyone can be an actor, which I think is a really refreshing take on that, because some people are real, they're gatekeepers around expertise and what have you. So yeah, do you believe I can do if I can see someone doing a thing that's like acting or singing, can I do it too?
There are to start with the voice and expand out from there. There are uh, pathology aside. So if we take out the variation that will occur if somebody has some kind of issue, some kind of uh, issue that that would sort of require surgical intervention or something like that. That aside, and we obviously the the instrument's kind of similar, but you and I are not the same. We're not twins. We're not built exactly the same. So of course there is variation. So theoretically that stands, right? The idea that if so you make a noise, I can replicate that noise and vice versa. Have the capacity to, have the ability to. Then there are kind of mechanical variations. So that's probably worth saying too, that there will be certain things that for whatever reason I am built better for. I'm I may be taller, and therefore my muscles might be slightly longer. And I'm able, like, it's no surprise, right, that that when we look at different types of athletes, so the type of people who become long distance runners versus sprinters, at that extreme high performance sport level, the bodies are pretty similar, like very different to each other, but like all of the long distance runners kind of have bodies that are very kind of similar to each other. And then the short distance sprinters have bodies that are similar to each other, so on and so forth. At that level. So anyone can act. Yep, I stand by that. Can anyone act like Meryl Streep, Andrew Scott, Anthony Hopkins?
Mm.
Maybe not. Maybe not, because maybe they're built in a particular way. They have, we just keep using the muscle idea because we can use that metaphorically as well. Like talk about the actor muscle or the emotional muscle or whatever, the empathetic muscle, that maybe their muscle is a little bit longer, it's a little bit fatter or whatever, which gives them that mechanical advantage over you or I. But I, as much as anything, it's a belief that I just choose to hold, of going, because it then just puts me in that position of going, well, I can't do it yet, but I'm going to gather a whole lot of information around me and work out how to test that further. Like, okay, I can't do it yet, but can I do it like they can? Can I sing, screamo death metal like I can hear that person doing? Well, let's gather the information around me in terms of how to do it, how to go about it, and then test the theory, and how close can I get? Because I think that's the thing with acting, is that anyone can, but at a certain point you'll just meet yourself in some way, meet your
Mm.
limitations and have to make a choice of going, do I limitations, or just where it gets a little bit tricky in some way. Like you might literally meet the brick wall and go, I actually can't do any more than this currently. Or you might just meet something where you go, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to meet that challenge that acting is asking me to meet in myself at the moment.
Mm.
I don't want to step across that line. And I think that's a moment of separating people out as well, of going, well, maybe then the continued journey with acting is not for you. And of course, there are so many different, acting looks so many different ways. So there's community theatre, sort of, and I'm not doing a hierarchy kind of
Mm.
thing, but that's
Yeah,
acting.
yeah.
That's acting, right? There's A-list Hollywood drama feature film. There's acting there. There's TV melodrama, the stuff that's on sort of around about now, around sort of 6 o'clock at night kind of thing. It's not even that
Yeah.
late. Just feels that late because it's dark. There's that kind of thing, and they're not the same acting. And you could maybe
Mm.
say they're not actors with the same kinds of skills. So even that, that idea, can somebody be an actor? It's like, well, what do we mean when we say that? Not everyone can do what those three that I listed can do, but not everyone wants to.
Mm.
So that's okay. I'm interested in that, though. I'm interested in what is perceived as being the pinnacle of acting, because I'm interested in this thing of capacity. I'm interested in like what is it to train to the highest level? What is it to, because that for me becomes about kind of demanding something of ourselves. What is it to wash the dishes the best these dishes have ever been
Mm.
washed? And some people go like, well, like, who cares? Who cares? I do, and some people do and some people don't. And that's what
Yeah,
sessions
yeah,
are
yeah.
about. People who kind
Mm.
of have that curiosity to keep picking away at things and to the point where somebody else might not even notice the difference between this version and that.
Mm.
But you know what it is because it's that slightly different, slight change to that piece of code that means that
Mm.
tiniest little response that is different, that gives you some kind of joy. It gives you a little bit of a
Yeah.
buzz to work at that
It
level, and other people
also,
don't care, and that's okay.
what you're saying just reminded me of something I was listening to earlier this week around input and results and how there's a disconnect between the two.
Mm.
So the example that I heard was if you take poor action, you get really terrible results. If you take good action, you get poor results. If you take excellent action, you get good results. If you take it, exceptional, you get excellent, but then just a little bit above exceptional is outstanding. And it's that outstanding thing that you actually get those exceptional results. And a lot of people, it feels like a lot of work and a lot of output to do an exceptional job. But what you're talking about, these minute changes, and in class the other day, you were talking about an athlete that trains to the millimeter in terms of form and stuff, and in all areas of high performance, there is that little bit more that is outstanding. And yes, it's really satisfying. And at that point, you're kind of competing with yourself in a way, but those are the performances that move us. But those are the people performing at that level that you notice. You notice that and you see that. You named a few of them.
Yeah, what's interesting here too is I think there's and I think it's the case for us too as people inside this industry. I think it's easy to chase the elite performer for no reason other than they're the elite performer. To chase being elite, right? To want to be like the Oscar-winning actors and to play the roles that they play. Truth be told, I think a lot of actors have no interest in actually acting like those people, being in those films, because they're not interested in those kinds of stories.
Mm.
Not interested in drama, which most of those stories are. They want to be an action hero or like I just want to do like funny comedy that makes people laugh, where I get to kind of be goofy or whatever. So there's kind of this weird thing that like the chase of the mastery of the pinnacle of what it is to be an actor, is to hold the little golden man, right? And then it's just interesting to go, but that isn't everyone's journey, and it's okay that it's not. Well, yeah, it's like you and I kind of chase something of that thing, and I think certainly the framework that I've built for actors as a training pathway is towards that, is towards this thing of
Mm.
what I would call, like high performance acting, the elite of what acting could be, because uh, not just because it's the hardest, right, but because the way that I want to be moved, the way that I want to be challenged as an audience member, the story worlds that often hold those types of stories line up with that.
Mm.
So, of course, it makes sense to me that's the thing that I'm kind of thinking a lot about and chasing and trying to work out how to um, be alongside actors if they are also interested in that. But like I say, acting looks lots of different ways. And who are we
Mm.
to judge somebody, be they an audience member, saying, well, like, I'm not really interested in that kind of stuff. This is what I like. As being lesser than, or having no taste or whatever. It's just the way that they are currently, or it's meeting their current need.
Mm.
Why do we watch story? Why do we engage in storytelling in that way? It's meeting a need inside us in some way.
Mm.
And yeah, as much as I would love to make everyone watch my favorite film, I'm well aware that many, many people will have no desire to, and will be very confused as to why they've been asked to. If they do, like, why? Why did you make me watch that? Why did you put me through that?
Hey, I'm going to test a couple of, how podcasters have these same questions
Have
that
they
they ask. So
have their
Tim
little
Ferriss,
sticky,
yeah,
gimmicky things? Yeah,
yeah. So Tim Ferriss has got the billboard question. What would you, if you could put a billboard up? Um, so actually, this one I feel like we've kind of covered it, but I'll ask it anyway. What is a belief that you have now that you have adopted? So you haven't always had this. A belief that you adopted across your life that has helped you or has markedly been life-changing. And it could be a belief from any point in your life, or it could
mm.
be something quite recent. But at one time you didn't believe this, or perhaps you even believed the opposite. But a belief that has kind of changed everything for you.
Yeah. It's got to sit in the territory of the way I now relate to my body, or the body, the human's
Mm.
body. I was very distrustful of it. So the belief there, and on all levels, I didn't trust the way that I felt. I didn't trust following through with the feelings that I felt. The information that it was giving me in terms of perceived sort of safety, or risk or danger, or whatever it might be, discomfort. And then that absolutely flowed into my acting once that became something I was exploring. And I gravitated towards and created a whole belief system around the brain, my intellect, my intelligence, in this way, ability to do the good acting. I could think my way into and out of anything, and I was very good at it.
Mm.
And have done a complete 180 on that in terms of the way that I think it it started with acting. That was where I was able to kind of test with some degree of safety what it would be to form a relationship with the entirety of me, or the rest of me, and invite it in, open the door and let it kind of come on in, and let it be a part of how I made sense and how I also expressed back out into the world. And then I would say that once that started feeling safe inside that confined space, it naturally just started expanding out from there into my life in general, where I'd say now that is a belief that I hold, or a relationship. That's the way I want to kind of think about it and talk about it.
Mm.
I have a really strong relationship with my body now. that certainly wasn't the case, even as recently as 15 years ago. I think it would
Mm,
have even then been almost the complete opposite.
mm.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Mm.
Perhaps our final question. Um,
What this we're knowing like Huberman
we
does
haven't
like
solved it yet.
4, 5, 6 hour long conversations.
I know.
I was
Yeah, this
prepared.
is part one of 100, and then that'll be chapter one, the 100. Um, oh, well, actually, no. There's
Yeah.
okay. No, I've got two questions,
Okay.
John. One is not a recurring one. Hey, it may well be. It's actually quite a
If
good
I
one.
give a good enough answer.
Yeah, yeah. How have I phrased it? Yeah. What is an itch you haven't scratched yet? So what's on the bucket list?
Doing the work that I do or engaging with people in the way that I do, um, cross-culturally, like outside of the world that I understand. So, be that in Japan or, wherever it might be, putting myself somewhere where I have very little understanding of the way that people go about life and using the way that I approach this thing of performance, of acting, but also of humaning, using
Mm,
acting lenses. Yeah, to kind of test and to see what I learn through encountering that difference. Mm.
mm. Well, we should probably do that.
What are you doing next year? Should we go on a world tour?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting, right? Because I think in so that's the answer. So I don't need to kind of stretch it out
Mm,
beyond that. But just to add on, it's I also get really interested in how it's so funny, Justin, having conversations like this and feeling myself about to say something that is something that only, again, 10 years ago, somebody else said to me, and I had a massive fuck off response to. And I'm feeling myself, sort of arriving at a place of going, and then having to fight myself,
yeah,
not
yeah.
telling the story of like, oh, well, but they meant it differently to how I mean it, or, the way
Mhm.
that I am meeting the evolution of myself. And there's something really humbling about that, of feeling yourself not be the person that you were whenever, recognizing that and going, oh, like I think completely differently about that now. I'll explain a little bit. What I mean, I'm really, as we've already talked about, this thing of ease. I have real ability now to sit inside change, to sit inside not knowing, to sit inside instability with a degree of comfort or of ease. It's like, yep, things aren't working. Cool. Okay, that's the work for today then. That's the work for this next chunk of time, is to work out how to get things working again, rather than, oh, I need to get out of here. I'm in the wrong job. I need to quit. I need to end this
Yeah.
relationship. Um,
Mm.
and that is not me passing any judgment on anyone who might feel that way in those moments of discomfort. But I have a real, I've developed, however I've done it, a way of being able to stay inside those spaces for longer than I used to be able to. Um, so why this popped into my head was thing of everything that I think because what I'm doing now, I'm doing well. I'll say that. The way that I'm working with actors is successful. There's a lot of success inside it, and lots of different markers of that. But it's working well. But there's a degree of comfort that sits with that as well, because I've been able to kind of work at it with a core group of people by and large as well. And so something of the more that you work with similar people and then other people who come into the fold who have similar qualities to them, the more that you're really just reinforcing something that you kind of worked out 5 years ago or whatever. And as I think about this idea of going to Japan, going to the outback of Australia, even going to, I would say, even, it's not just about New Zealand, like going to Northland or something, like getting out of the big cities. Um, I know that I will meet challenge there. Just through people being different and dealing with the world in different ways and having different views on things. And that excites me as opposed to terrifies me. So I think it would be very easy to say, well, just stay where you know it's going to work.
Yeah. Your ability to continue to evolve across time is really rare, and I've seen and admired that in you across the time we've known each other, and I think it's such an asset, and it's something that I model. That I want to model from you, is because usually the trajectory is people harden into their beliefs as they get older, but I think it's a real strength that you have, and also that you share downwards, with the people that you're coaching and working with, of not being wed to a belief system. It's kind of, I think I heard you say it the other day to a student. It was like, it's whether it's true or not in a way doesn't matter. It's like, does it serve you? Does it serve you,
Mm.
or what are you finding out? Um, and perhaps to that end, I have one final question. Um, and in a way, I feel like I know the answer to this.
But
But
what's
your
what's
answer.
the bet? How much do you want to put on it?
$5.
A coffee, coffee,
Yeah, I'll buy you a coffee.
or vice versa. If you get it right, I'm buying you the coffee.
Yeah.
If what
Well,
I
then how
say,
will you know, though? I'll have to write it down, and
well,
I'll just say that
you'll
was
just
it.
have to deal with your with being the liar or the
Yeah,
truth teller.
no, just a really good actor. Yeah, what's your advice to someone who feels like they are not living into their full potential?
So the way that you even ask that question suggests that the person has, on some level, whether it's an image, it might just be a feeling, there might be some words, there might be a literal human model of the thing. They've got a seed of something other, right? That, like I say, that there's something that they can perceive. So I think in a way, one of the things I'd say is, you know what it is. You know what it is. So that's not the work. The work isn't to work out what it is. The work is to work out what the action is that you need to take to start, again, to get out of that place of sitting, thinking, feeling, seeing the image, and starting to test ways that will either move you closer or further away through the test, and you learn regardless. So hopefully I'm being clear. The work isn't how do we do it, because in a way the answer already sits inside the knowing that I'm not quite where I want to be. I think then part of it's about community, which is not something we've talked about, I think, at all today. And it does form such a large part of the way I think about what I do. We need to gather the right people around us to lubricate the cogs and the wheels, and make that movement easeful, to keep bringing that word back in that we said so early on. How do I make those creaky fear wheels, the things that are keeping me, because I'm afraid of trying, how do we make them start to turn? Maybe part of the oiling of the mechanics of things is other people who are maybe already doing a version of it, or who love us deeply and will support us no matter what we do. It might be a community of people who are the same, who do the same thing. It can look lots of different ways, but I think that it's something of not trying to do it alone.
Well, it makes me think of that idea that you are, they say you're the sum of the people you hang out with. And so whatever the result is or whatever this thing is to get around people where that is the norm, because that will become your norm, or your standard will shift
Yeah.
based on who's around you.
And this
Um,
is such a kind of dorkily simplistic way of saying this, and there'll be other beautiful humans who've spoken about this so much more eloquently. But at the heart of it, right, if if we've got people in our lives that, relationships that we actually care about, not the surface level things, but like people that we consider as friends,
mm,
or very close colleagues or collaborators or lovers, etc., and we're kind of we're managing who we are in front of them in some way, and so we're only letting them see the perfect version of us, and we don't
mm,
want them to see the fact that, oh, I'm feeling I need it, like I'm not in the right place in my life at the moment, and I need to change something. If we're afraid of that being seen, then the person that they are friends with, lovers with, collaborators with anyway is not the real you. You know what I
mm,
mean? So it's a relationship that's built on bullshit anyway. It's built on kind
mm,
of faulty foundations. So this nervousness we have about letting people in on the trickier moments in our lives, of saying like, "Hey, I'm not sure at the moment. I'm just letting you know. I'm
mm.
trying something out and it might go completely wrong, and I'm letting you in on it, and I want you to be in around me as I try this out." The nervousness that we have there, I think, is something to investigate. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But
Mm,
certainly, I'm going to sum it up in a really short way. My advice is that the work is not about trying to work out how to do it, because I think you know how to do it on some level, or you at least know the next step. So it's about getting into action, and maybe part of what will make getting into action feel easier is building community around you as you start to go about this, go on this new journey.
well, to that end, where can people find you online if they want to join class, or if they want to connect with you? Where should they go?
Yeah, they'll find me in a forest somewhere,
That's
on a
one of
beach
my favorite things
somewhere.
about you. Yeah,
They'll find
yeah,
me in a forest, on a beach, up a mountain, or in a
yeah,
in a room with actors, probably.
yeah.
In terms of the work I do with actors, I spend most of my time at the moment in Auckland, working with actors there, despite not living in Auckland myself. I live in Wellington, and I occasionally force other parts of the country and maybe the world, as we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
to occasionally have to deal with me, have to accommodate me. Um, my name is Hunter, not my first name, the surname. So if you can remember that, you can just search Jon Hunter, I suppose, but Hunter Studio, with a dot before the IO,
Mm-hmm.
is pretty much the way that you'll find the website, and then most social media as well, I think, is that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, John, and for sharing. You know, we've talked so much. We've had so many conversations, and every time, we open up new things.
Mm.
So let's do it again, shall we? And
I guess
again and
we
again and
should.
again.
I guess we should. For ourselves as much as anything, because
Yeah.
equally I find the type of conversation that you draw out of me, that we are able to have together, one that, um, or ones, because there's certainly many and long, um, conversations that challenge me in really good ways. I'm not, as much as I perhaps have worked a whole lot of stuff out for myself, I'm also still somebody that spends a lot of time thinking about things,
Mm,
and not necessarily always articulating them. So I think that's something that I really appreciate about the conversations that we have, like the one that we have had today, is that you've asked me questions that I've never actually had to put my answers into
Mm.
words quite in this way before, and that teaches me a lot as well. And the future conversations, as much as anything, will be me upgrading my answer, right? Because of what
Yeah.
we've talked about, because of the fact that, maybe it's okay to never actually kind of settle and go, I've got it figured out. I know what acting is. I know what lifing is, or whatever. Going, oh,
Yeah.
I knew what it was then, but it's not that now. So
Mm.
if you're listening now, here's what it is for me now. Here's what the advice
Yeah.
is now. Mm. Yeah.
Ever
So thank you
evolving.
as well.
Thank you, John.